I welcome all of you to the video lecture series on computational fluid dynamics, development, application analysis. This lecture is on iterative methods for solution of linear algebraic equations. The details of this lecture can be found in the chapter 4 of the companion book, chapter 4 on essentials of numerical methods for CFD. This lecture corresponds to the topic 2 on essentials for CFD, corresponding to essentials of numerical methods. Whenever you want to learn CFD, then in the previous lecture, I have presented the essentials of fluid dynamics and heat transfer. And we are into this subsection, essentials of numerical methods, where in the previous lecture, I have presented the finite difference method, where I have mentioned that when we use finite volume method, even then, finite volume method gives us a linear algebraic equations for the internal grid points, which are shown by yellow circles. For the boundary grid points, which are shown by blue circle, I have mentioned that we use finite difference method. So this lecture series is on finite volume method, but note that for boundary conditions, to obtain algebraic equations for boundary conditions, we indeed use finite difference method. So finite difference method is a numerical method which is very essential if you want to learn CFD, because that is what we use for boundary conditions. Whereas we need iterative methods in CFD, which you might have taken in your earlier course in numerical methods, because we have to solve solution of linear algebraic equations. Later on, I'll mention that if we use implicit method, you end up with situations where there are two types of method, explicit method and implicit method. For implicit method, you end up with a system of algebraic equations which are coupled in nature. And there are normally two methods of solving the system of linear algebraic equations. One method is that you take any linear algebraic equation can be expressed in terms of coefficient matrix, unknown vector, and a constant vector. So one way of solving any linear system of linear algebraic equation is that you take the inverse of the coefficient matrix, multiply by the constant vector. This method is called as a direct method. This method we do not use in CFD. We use a method which is called as iterative methods or an indirect method. So this lecture is focused on iterative method for the solution of system of linear algebraic equations. So even when we use finite volume method, we get a system of linear algebraic equations. But if it is implicit in nature, then we have to solve it iteratively. So we need to understand what are the different iterative methods that will be later on applied in CFD. So I'll start with iterative methods and then I'll go on to its applications for CFD. The general definition of any iterative method is presented here. When you consider any iterative method, it is initiated by assuming an initial guess, and we obtain an improved or approximate solution which we call as first iterative value, which is checked for a condition that is called as convergence. If the condition is not obeyed, the first iterative value becomes the second iterative value, and this procedure is continuous iteration by iteration till convergence. So any iterative method has the stopping criteria for any iterative method is that it has to follow a condition which is called as convergence. Otherwise, we start with first iterative value, obtain second iterative value. From the second iterative value, we obtain third iterative value. And this way, our iterations continues until we reach to a particular iteration which obeys this condition which we call as convergence. If that is obeyed, then that iterative value becomes the true value or the approximate solution of the system of linear algebraic equation. Now I'll present what is the convergence. Convergence of any iterative method is defined by an error. So there are two things which are involved in convergence. One is error and second is tolerance. This error is represented by delta phi, where this phi is an unknown. So we take the difference of the superscript corresponds to n is the old iterative value, n plus 1 is the new iterative value. So let us suppose we have 10 linear algebraic equation with 10 unknown. So I is varying from 1 to 10. Then when to begin with, you can start with, let us suppose your unknowns are x1 to x10. Then you can start with an initial guess of all the values of x equals to 0. And from each from the system of algebraic equations, you can obtain the first iterative value. Then you take the difference of the first iterative value with the initial guess. So if you have 10 different unknowns, you will have 10 such deltas. So when I is varying from 1 to 10, you will have 10 differences, and you pick the maximum of that, and that maximum, if it is less than what we call as practically zero, this epsilon we call it defined as a practically zero. Computer does not understand what is zero. So if you define 10 to power minus 3 as your zero, or 10 to power minus 5, this is called as convergence tolerance. So while in an iterative method, you have to define this convergence tolerance, and if your error is less than the convergence tolerance, then only you stop your iterations. Otherwise, you keep doing the iterations. But what is the guarantee that the iterations will converge? So we try to ensure the procedure is convergent if each iteration produces an approximation to the solution that approach the exact solution as the number of iterations increases. So as the number of iterations is increasing, if our iterative values are approaching towards the exact solution, then only this iterative method will converge. Otherwise, it can approach this difference, error can keep on increasing, and then that case we call as the solution is diverging. As I mentioned earlier, that there are two methods of solving system of linear algebraic equation, direct method and indirect method. So here, there are certain conditions under which this indirect or iterative method is recommended. So I'll list down these conditions. The first condition is if the number of equations is large. So in your system of algebraic equation, if there are large number of equations, then iterative method is recommended. The second condition is most of the coefficient in the coefficient matrix are zero. So if the coefficient matrix is sparse, this is the second condition for the usage of iterative method. The third condition is the system of equation is diagonally dominant, because if the system of equation is diagonally dominant, then your iterative method is guaranteed to converge. So we try to ensure this. And the fourth condition is the system of equation is not ill conditioned. So under these four conditions, we apply an iterative or indirect method. And these are the conditions which are encountered in CFD, which I'll present in the next slide. So the conditions which are presented in the previous slide for the usage of iterative methods are commonly encountered in CFD. Because the first condition on large number of linear algebraic equation is applicable in CFD because we have large number of grid size. The second condition on sparse matrix, sparse coefficient matrix, is due to the algebraic formulations which we use that results in linear algebraic equation with sparse coefficient matrix. This will be presented a little later. But to give you an idea, even if let us suppose you have 25 internal grid points, and if you obtain 25 algebraic equations, in our algebraic formulations, we obtain the value of, let us suppose if it's a heat conduction problem, the value of temperature at a particular point is not a function of remaining 25 points inside the domain. It is function of only certain neighbors, which I presented earlier. Is function of its east, west, north, south neighbor. So the coefficient of the remaining internal grid point, it is zero. So this leads to a sparse coefficient matrix in CFD. And the third condition on diagonal dominance, we ensure during our algebraic formulation because we want to guarantee the convergence of the iterative methods. And the fourth condition of ill-conditioned matrix, we avoid during the discretization, because if it is an ill-conditioned matrix, then the determinant of the matrix will be zero and will not be able to get the solutions in the iterative method. Thus, it is generally more efficient in terms of computational time and storage requirement to solve the system of linear algebraic equation in CFD by the iterative than the direct method. This iterative method is not only used in CFD, but it is also used in finite element methods. Now I'll present the two basic iterative methods which are commonly used in CFD. The first method is Jacobi method, where I'll take an example. Let us suppose you have two equations where your unknowns are x and y. Let us suppose 2x plus 3y is equals to 5, 5x plus 6y is equals to 9. So if you have two equations with two unknowns, if you want to solve it by, let us say, iterative method, what we do is that we take the first equation and we keep x on the left hand side, we take y on the right hand side. So the first equation we call it an equation from which we will obtain iterative solution for x. From the second equation, we keep only y on the left hand side and take all the terms on the right hand side. So the first equation, x, is an equation for it to obtain the iterative values of x. The second equation is used to obtain the value of y. So you start, let us suppose we start with an initial guess. The simplest of initial guess could be x equals to 0 and y is equals to 0. So uh, then after you are starting from an initial guess, then you solve this two equation in a sequence. Let us suppose you decide first to solve for x from the first equation. Then while you are solving for y, there are two possible options to solve, because the second equation for y will have the x on the right hand side. So you have now two options. Either you use the initial guess value or you can use the updated value of x which has been already been obtained, because you are solving it second in the sequence. So in a Jacobi iteration, on the right hand side, all the other variables value, if you take it from the initial condition, this is called as Jacobi iteration. Whereas if you use the updated values of those uh, neighbors whose values you have already obtained in your sequence of iterations, then this is called as Gauss-Seidel iteration. This will be more clear when I'll take an example problem and explain. Iterative methods do not converge for all set of equations nor for all possible arrangement of particular sets of equations. So convergence is not guaranteed in any iterative methods. Diagonal dominance, if you ensure diagonal dominance, then convergence is guaranteed. So diagonal dominance is sufficient condition for convergence of Jacobian Gauss-Seidel iteration for any initial guess. If the system of linear equation is not diagonally dominant, the sequence of LAEs can be rearranged by row interchanges to make them diagonally dominant. What is meant by this? This will be clear through an example problem which I'll present later. So let us suppose you have three equations with three unknowns. The unknowns are phi1, phi2 and phi3. What I mean by the diagonal dominant, at this moment, if you see the diagonal, so the diagonals are 9, 2 and 3. So we want to ensure when we say diagonal dominance, then the coefficient of the diagonals, so the value right now, in this case it is 9. If you see the neighboring coefficient, it is 1 and minus 1. So this 9 is greater than the sum of the coefficient of the other unknowns. Like here, if you see 2, it is less than, because here the coefficient is 1 and here the coefficient is 9. If you take 3, here again your coefficient is, you take the absolute value 1 and this is 8. So to ensure diagonal dominance, what we do is that we interchange, we make this as an equation for, so let us suppose we make this equation for phi1, we make this as an equation for phi3, we make this as an equation for phi2. So if we do the row interchange, the second row and third row, if we interchange, and then we get a coefficient matrix like this. So we interchange the second, this is called as a row interchange. So if you interchange the second and third equation, then you get a coefficient matrix. So what you are doing is this you are using for phi1, this you are using for phi2. So the coefficient here, note that it is 1 minus 8, 3, which we are writing for phi2. This we are using it for phi3, 1, 2, 9, which is coming here. So by row interchange, we have ensured, now you can see that now the diagonal element, the absolute magnitude of the diagonal element is greater than the sum of all the elements in a particular row. Like here, if you take the sum of the absolute, this is 1 and this absolute value is 1. So 9 is greater than 2. Here, if you take the absolute value, it is 8. It is greater than 3 plus 1, which is 4. Here, the diagonal value is 9, which is greater than 1 plus 2. So that way, this is the diagonal dominance equation. And if you use an iterative method, it is guaranteed to converge. This is a simple system of equation. You can solve it by pen and paper. And we know that the exact solution for this is x1, x2, x3 is equals to 1. So this is like a problem where we want to test how good is our iterative method. So we already know the solution and we'll compare our numerical solution through iterative method with this exact solution. So from the above set of equation for Jacobian method, as I said, in a Jacobian method, So first equation phi1 is expressed in terms of phi2 and phi3 as shown here. On this equation, we are writing phi2 as a function of phi1, phi3. Similarly, phi3 is equal to phi1, phi2. But note that on the right hand side, if you are taking the previous iterative value, that is what we call as Jacobi iterations. So if you are using a Jacobi iterations, and in a Gauss-Seidel method, if you have already solved for phi1, then you can use then updated value of phi1. So note that here in the previous slide, although this is the sequence in which you are solving, you are first solving for phi1, then phi2, then phi3. So once you have solved for phi1, then when you want to go for solution of phi2, you have two options for phi1. Either you use the old iterative value or the updated value which you have already obtained. So note the difference. Jacobi iteration uses the old iterative value, whereas Gauss-Seidel method uses the updated value or a new iterative value to obtain the consequence of this difference between the two methods will be presented through an example problem. And this is the convergence criteria. Basically here the small n is 3, you have 3 unknowns, 3 variables, phi1, phi2, phi3, and this is your convergence tolerance, and this is your error. Where basically when you to calculate the error, you'll get error corresponding to phi1, phi2, and phi3, and you pick the maximum of it and ensure that this is less than equal to this convergence tolerance, which has been defined as 10 to the power minus 4 here. Now, if you develop a computer program for the iterative solution of the equations which I have mentioned, and if you solve it, this corresponds to table 4.2 in the companion book, where the iterative solution and convergence by Jacobi and Gauss-Seidel method is presented here. So the first column represents the iterative values. This is initial guess. So initial guess has been taken as phi1, phi2, phi3 is equals to 0. This is the first iterative value, second iterative value, and so on. I had already mentioned that the exact solution is 1. So note that, so as you can see the change in the iteration, this is the way Jacobi iteration is changing for phi1, this is the way Gauss-Seidel method is changing. So for phi1, this is the iterative values for phi2, this is for phi3, and this is the error for various iterations. So this table shows the variation in the value of phi1, phi2, phi3, and the error as the iteration increases. So you can see that as the error, the iteration increases, phi1, phi2, phi3, you can see here, they reach to the exact solution and they converge in 6 iterations. Whereas in the Jacobi iteration takes 10 iterations. So the difference in the procedure between the Gauss-Seidel and Jacobi is such that Gauss-Seidel leads to faster convergence. Such as in this problem, the solution has converged after 6 iterations, whereas Jacobi iteration took 10 iterations for convergence. You can also see that way the error is reducing. You can see the Jacobi iteration is reducing from 1.3 to 0.6 to 1.14 and so on. Gauss-Seidel, you can see that convergence is monotonic. The error is monotonically reducing. Now I'll present the application of this iterative method for CFD. Let us take a two-dimensional steady-state heat conduction with volumetric heat generation. So I have mentioned in the finite difference method for the Govan equation for 2D steady-state heat conduction. It's basically d square T by dx square plus d square T by dy square plus q bar by k. So if you use, let us say, second order central difference scheme for d square T by dx square and d square T by dy square, then let's suppose by finite difference method you have obtained this algebraic equation from the governing equations, and this is the loop which you use to solve for the internal grid points, and these are the boundary conditions which has been presented. Like let us suppose on all the walls there is a constant wall temperature. So on the west wall the temperature is TWB, east wall it is TEB, south boundary it is TSB, and north boundary it is TNB. Okay, so this is the algebraic equation for your internal grid points, which are shown by yellow circle, and these are the boundary conditions for your, which are shown in the previous lecture by blue circles. So here I am showing you in a graphical form. So these are the boundary points where you have where you apply the boundary condition for west boundary. This is for south boundary. This is for east boundary, and this is for north boundary. Now the finite difference method, the loop which you'll be using, here you have 9 yellow circles. So note that we use only one equation, but we use that equation in a loop, because the equation which has been shown in the previous slide, you can see it has arguments I and j, and we use a loop 2 to I max minus 1. Now I max corresponds to maximum number of grid points. So in this you can see the maximum number of grid point in the x as well as y direction is 5. So if you use this loop I max minus 1, so I max is 5. 5 minus 1 will be 4. So I will be varying from 2 to 4, j will be varying from 2 to 4 when you are applying this equation. Now when you see this equation, you calculate so if you use a loop where, let us suppose you have outer loop for j is varying from 2 to j max minus 1, inner loop of I varying from 2 to I max minus 1. So the first value that will be encountered by this equation will be I is equals to 2, j is equals to 2. Now you can see the I is equals to 2 and j is equals to 2, this equation corresponds to this involve which neighbors. So for I is equals to 2, j is equals to 2, the neighbors which are involved are I is equals to 3, I is equals to 1, j is equals to 1, and j is equals to 3. So this indicates that to calculate temperature at 2, 2, it involves I plus 1, that is 3, 2, I minus 1, which is 1, 2. It involves I comma j plus 1, which is 2, 3, I comma j minus 1, which is 2, 1. So note that to calculate temperature at a particular point, what I am showing you here is what is called as computational stencil. This is shown by this finger shape which I have shown you. This is what is called as computational stencil, which basically indicates to calculate the flow property at a particular point, which are the neighbors which are involved. So note that there are 4 neighbors which are involved. The coefficient of the other grid points in the domain is 0. So that's why the coefficient matrix becomes sparse in this case, and basically we get a pentadiagonal matrix because there are 5 circular values, 5 non-zero coefficients which are involved in any linear algebraic equations. So we start with 2, 2. So if your loop is, outer loop is j 2 to 4 and inner loop is I 2 to 4, then the way you scroll through is this. First you calculate 2, 2, then you calculate 3, 2, then you calculate 4, 2, and so on. So this way you move in this direction. For j is equals to 2, I is varying from 2 to 4. Because j is your outer loop, and when j changes to 3, then again I varies from 2 to 4. J changes to 4. So this way the sequence in which your equation works basically calculates the updated iterative value of this point, this point. So this is the sequence in which the calculations are done inside the loop. So this shows the various grid points and the boundary conditions for 2D grid conduction along with the sequence shown by these arrows in the point-by-point solution of system of linear algebraic equations for internal grid points. So note that whenever you are, let's suppose whenever you are solving for this grid points, it involves the north and the east. When you are solving for this west and south, they are already computed from previous iterations. So when you are using Gauss-Seidel iteration, then use an updated value of this south and west. Whereas north and east, they are not computed. So you use the previous iterative value. This is the matrix form of the finite difference method. So if you use vary I and j as shown here, then you can write this equation in this matrix form. Now, as I mentioned, you can see that so there are 2 types of points which I mentioned. There are certain points which I have shown, which I called as this is what is called as interior grid point, and these are called as border grid point because These yellow circles, one of their neighbor is blue circle. So those yellow circle whose one of the nearest neighbor is blue circle, we call that as a border breakpoint. Now, whenever you write an equation for this, you can see that this here is a constant wall temperature. So the coefficients which will be, not this will be a constant, it will go to the constant vector. So the coefficient, it will have only two neighbors. So for the, so this is what is called internal grid point. In this, all the neighbors are yellow circle. There is no blue circle involved. So in such cases, you will have 5 non-zero coefficients. Whichever yellow circle has a blue circle its neighbor, then it will have less than 5. Like this will have 3 yellow circle values, so 3 non-zero coefficients, and this will be basically replaced by the constant value. So this will go to the constant vector. So in this slide, what you see is that for 2, 2, there are only 3 non-zero coefficients, because there are although there are 2 more, but those comes in the boundary condition, the constant vector. So as you move from I is equals to 2, 3, 4, j is 2. Or then you move to j is equals to 3 and I varying from 2 to 4. Then you move to j is equals to 4 and I varying from 2 to 3. This is the coefficient matrix which you form when you express this algebraic formulations, finite difference method based discretized algebraic formulation to a matrix form. This is called as the coefficient matrix, this is called as the unknown vector, this is the constant vector. So note that in the constant vector, we have the boundary conditions along with the volumetric heat generation term. So now let us suppose you have developed a code and then using for an iterative solution of the problem which I had mentioned, and you want to obtain the solution. So let us take a problem which has an exact solution. In heat transfer course, you might have studied that if you have left wall, bottom wall, right wall at a constant temperature, let us say ambient temperature, and if your top wall is maintained at a larger temperature, for this problem, there is an analytical solution which is possible. So the exact solution for this problem is given by this. So let us suppose so we are taking a two-dimensional steady-state heat conduction without any volumetric heat generation, and we are choosing a problem which has an exact solution. This problem corresponds to 3 walls at an ambient temperature and top wall corresponding to a different temperature. And this is the non-dimensional temperature exact solution for non-dimensional temperature theta. The non-dimensional temperature theta is defined as T minus T infinity divided by TW minus T infinity, where TW is the top wall temperature, T infinity is the temperature of the other 3 walls. This is the exact solution. So if you let us say you develop your own computer program and then you obtain the numerical solutions. So let me show you the grids which we are considering. We are considering the grid distribution as this. This is the finite difference grid, where we are representing the grid point which are shown by circle at the intersection of the horizontal and vertical lines. So here you have 9 yellow circles. The blue circle values you already know. On the left wall, the blue circle, bottom wall and right wall, it is non-dimensional temperature is 0. For the top wall, non-dimensional temperature is 1. By iterative solution, we will be obtaining the solution for this 9 yellow circle values, which are internal grid points. So for those 9 values, this is the converged solution which has been obtained numerically using Gauss-Seidel method as shown here. This is a converged numerical solution obtained by Gauss-Seidel method, and these are your analytical solution. Now you can see that the difference between the numerical and analytical, like here it is numerical is 0.4286, analytical is 0.32. Here it is 0.5268, here it is 0.54. So the difference is negligible. So you can feel confident that your iterative method, you have done programming properly, and this is like testing of your solution, of your numerical solution with the analytical solution. I'm showing you the application of the iterative method for a two-dimensional steady-state heat conduction, where we have taken up a problem which has an exact solution and we compared our numerical solution with the exact solution. So this table represents the testing of your iterative method while applying it for a two-dimensional heat conduction problem. After you have tested, you can solve another problem. Let us suppose left wall is maintained at a constant wall temperature. All the walls are maintained at a constant wall temperature, but each wall is maintained at a different temperature. For this problem, these are the governing equation, this is the boundary condition, and this is the linear algebraic formulation for a steady state heat conduction with no volumetric heat generation. So this is the matrix form of the linear algebraic equation, where here again we are considering 9 yellow circles as shown here. Corresponding to those, this is the coefficient matrix. Note that this is a pentadiagonal matrix because there is only 5 diagonals where the coefficients are non-zero. This is called as main diagonal, where you have all the coefficients, all the values as 4. This is the upper diagonal, where you have -1 and there are certain 0 in between. And then you have another diagonal. So there are 2 upper diagonal, 2 lower diagonal, and the main diagonal. So there are 5 diagonals where you have non-zero values. So that's why this is called as a pentadiagonal matrix. And all the other elements, note that they are 0. And you can also note if there are larger number of grid points, then in the coefficient matrix there are much more zeros as compared to the non-zero. This is the case when we have 9 yellow circles or 9 internal grid points. In actual CFD problem, note that we have millions of points. So in that case, you can see as you keep increasing the number of grid points, the ratio of the zero element and non-zero element will increase tremendously. So for most of the CFD problem, the fact that we use a large number of grid points, we end up with a situation where the coefficient matrix is very sparse. And under this condition, it is recommended that instead of taking the inverse of this coefficient matrix, we should solve it iteratively. And that is what is used in the CFD. So if you solve this problem, you have already tested your code. And if you solve, let us suppose you take left wall 100, bottom wall 200, right wall 300, top wall 400, then you obtain a solution as shown here. This is like I am showing you by a line contour and a flooded color contour. So once you obtain the steady state temperature distribution, you have to basically define the x coordinate, y coordinate, and the temperature corresponding to it. If you use that data, if you store it in a proper data structure, and if you take it to a graphical software, and if you use a command for line contour, you can get the temperature distribution. So what this figure is showing is that on this line the temperature is 280 degrees centigrade. On this line the temperature is 180 degrees centigrade. On this line the temperature is 120. So it's like isotherms, constant temperature lines. Okay, so this is the line contour of temperature. Along with the line contour, you can also have a flooded color contour. So what is being done is that, but when you have a flooded contour, there is a color bar which is also shown. Like here, the white color corresponds to 400 degrees centigrade, 250 corresponds to a yellow color, 100 degree corresponds to blue color. So, so there is another option. Along with this line contour, you can plot the flooded color contour. So here I am showing you steady state temperature field as a line contour and also as a flooded color contour. So with this, I had come to the end of this lecture, and this is the companion details for this lecture can be found in the chapter 4 of this companion book, Introduction to Computational Fluid Dynamics Development Application Analysis. So in this lecture, I had presented the 2 iterative methods, Gauss-Seidel method and Jacobi methods, which we will use later on in CFD. Thank you for your attention.